The underground parking garage of the Azure Towers smelled like concrete and secrets. Rachel Brooks stood perfectly still in the dim fluorescent light, her wedding ring catching fractured reflections as her hand hovered over the chest freezer's lock. It was 11:47 p.m. on March 15, 2024, and the pregnancy test she'd taken that morning had shown 2 pink lines that promised joy. She'd come down here looking for the vintage champagne Tarek kept for special occasions, the kind that cost more than her first car, the kind you opened when life delivered miracles. Instead, she found something else entirely. The lock had been open, just slightly. Tarek was meticulous about everything, obsessive even, so the unlocked freezer felt like an invitation or perhaps a test. Rachel's fingers trembled as she lifted the heavy lid, expecting bottles nestled in ice, expecting celebration waiting to happen. The mechanical hum grew louder as cold air rushed out, and for a moment, Rachel saw only darkness and frost. Then her flashlight beam found them. 11 photographs, each one laminated in thick plastic, each one showing a different woman. All blonde, all young, all staring at the camera with expressions that ranged from joy to something Rachel couldn't quite name but felt in her bones. The photos were arranged chronologically, dated in the bottom right corner in Tarek's elegant handwriting. 1999, 2004, 2008, 2011, 2015, 2017, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023. Beneath the photos lay a leather journal, its pages filled with notes written in multiple languages: Arabic, English, French. Rachel's hands shook as she opened it, her breath forming clouds in the freezing air. Each page was devoted to a different woman. Names, dates, observations, clinical assessments that read like livestock breeding records. Elena Sokolov, subject number 1. Acquisition, August 1999. Status, terminated. Reason, excessive resistance to conditioning protocol. Rachel's vision blurred. She flipped through more pages, her heart hammering against her ribs so hard she thought it might crack them. Natasha Berg, subject number 3. Acquisition, June 2004. Initial compliance promising. Month 4, regression. Increased pharmaceutical intervention required. Katrina Wells, subject number 7. Acquisition, March 2015. Pregnancy complication accelerated timeline. Disposition, transferred to Al Sofia facility. The final page made Rachel's knees buckle. She grabbed the freezer's edge to keep from collapsing onto the cold concrete floor. Rachel Brooks, subject number 12. Acquisition, November 2023. Optimal candidate. Art background facilitates appreciation for preservation. Current status, pregnant. Estimated transport date, March 20th, 2024. 5 days from now. Rachel stood in that garage for what might have been minutes or hours, time losing meaning as her mind tried to process what her eyes were seeing. The man she'd married 6 months ago, the man whose child was growing inside her, had written her name in a journal full of dead or missing women, had labeled her subject number 12, had scheduled her for something called transport in 5 days. The pregnancy test in her jacket pocket suddenly felt less like a blessing and more like a chain. 6 months earlier, Rachel had believed in fairy tales. She'd been standing in the Crescent Gallery during the opening of Lost Women, Portraits Through Time, an exhibition she'd curated featuring Renaissance paintings of forgotten female subjects. The gallery was full of Dubai's art elite, people who bought paintings the way normal people bought groceries, and Rachel had been explaining the symbolism in a Caravaggio piece when she'd felt someone's gaze on her like a physical touch. Sheikh Tariq al-Almaheri had been watching her from across the room with an intensity that should have frightened her, but instead made her feel seen in a way she'd never experienced. He was tall and elegant, wearing traditional Emirati dress with the kind of effortless authority that came from generations of wealth and power, and when he approached her after the crowd thinned, his first words were about the painting's use of chiaroscuro and its relationship to Caravaggio's own criminal past. They talked for 3 hours, about art and beauty and the human obsession with preserving moments that were meant to fade. Tariq spoke 6 languages and had degrees from Oxford and the Sorbonne, and he treated Rachel's Midwest American state school education like it was equally valuable. He asked questions that made her think, made observations that challenged her assumptions, and when he invited her to dinner at the Pearl Tower restaurant, Rachel said yes without hesitation. The restaurant occupied the top floor of one of Dubai's most exclusive buildings. Tariq apparently didn't need reservations. They'd eaten courses Rachel couldn't pronounce and drunk wine older than she was, and Tariq had told her about his family's business empire with the vague confidence of someone whose wealth made specifics unnecessary. He owned properties in 12 countries. He collected art not as investment but as passion. He'd been looking for someone who understood that beauty wasn't about ownership but about appreciation. Rachel had fallen hard and fast, the way you fall in dreams where the ground keeps disappearing beneath your feet. Tariq took her to his family's desert estate in a private helicopter, arranged a private viewing at the National Museum, brought her first editions of her favorite books with dedications written in his careful script. He quoted Rumi and Hafiz, knew her favorite composers, understood why she'd spent 6 years in graduate school studying art history despite the debt it created. 2 months in, during a trip to Paris where he'd somehow arranged after-hours access to an exclusive private collection, Tariq had gotten down on one knee in front of a Manet and offered her a ring with a diamond so large it seemed obscene. Rachel had said yes with tears streaming down her face, believing she'd found the one person in the world who truly understood her, who saw past her student loans and second-hand clothes to something valuable beneath. The wedding had been small by Dubai standards, just them and a handful of her friends. Tariq's family was complicated, he'd explained with practiced sadness. His mother had left when he was a child, abandoned the family, brought shame. His father had died years ago. Rachel's heart had broken for the lonely little boy he must have been, and she'd promised herself she would give him the family he'd never had, the permanence he'd always deserved. But the honeymoon period had ended the day they returned from their wedding in the Maldives. Tariq had changed, subtle shifts at first but growing more pronounced with each passing week. He'd asked her to promise never to dye her hair, said blonde was perfect and changing it would be like painting over a masterpiece. He'd suggested she quit her job at the gallery, said his wife shouldn't have to work, said he wanted to take care of her. He'd become obsessive about her schedule, about where she went and who she saw, framing his control as protection, his jealousy as love. Rachel's friends had started to drift away, finding themselves uninvited to dinner parties, their calls going unreturned because Tariq always needed her for something else. Her mother called less frequently after Tariq mentioned during a visit that Rachel's family just didn't understand their relationship, didn't appreciate the life he was giving her. And Rachel, who'd spent her whole life being the smart one, the careful one, had convinced herself that this was normal, that wealthy Middle Eastern men were traditional, that love meant compromise. Now, standing in the garage with 11 photos of women who'd probably made the same compromises, Rachel understood that she'd been collected, acquired, added to an inventory that stretched back 25 years. The charming, cultured man who quoted Persian poetry and brought her roses wasn't her husband. He was her captor, and she'd walked into his cage willingly, smiling the whole way. Rachel carefully photographed every page of the journal with her phone, her hands steadier now that shock was giving way to survival instinct. She took pictures of the photos, of the dates, of every detail she could capture in the freezer's dim light. Then she closed the lid exactly as she'd found it, left the lock in the same slightly open position, and walked back to the elevator with her champagne bottle like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. The elevator doors closed, and Rachel watched her reflection in the polished steel, a blonde woman in expensive designer abaya carrying vintage champagne, and she wondered how many of the women in those photos had seen themselves like this before they became subjects, before they became numbers, before they became whatever they were now. The elevator climbed toward the penthouse, and Rachel's hand moved to her stomach where Tariq's child was growing. Subject number 12. Transport date, March 20th. 5 days to figure out how to save herself and her baby from a man who collected women like art, who preserved them like butterflies, who saw love not as connection but as permanent possession. 5 days to become the one who got away. Rachel's small apartment in the older part of Dubai felt like a crime scene, though the only crime was her own ignorance. She'd fled the Azure Towers at 2 a.m. with a bag of hastily packed clothes, the journal photographs on her phone, and one of the laminated pictures she'd slipped into her jacket. A woman named Katrina Wells, subject number 7, smiling in what looked like a gallery opening, unaware she had 3 months left before she'd disappear. Now, at her desk with her laptop glowing in the darkness, Rachel began the desperate work of understanding what her husband really was. She started with the names from the journal, typing each one into search engines with shaking fingers, while dawn slowly painted her windows with desert light. Elena Sokolov. The search results materialized like ghosts. Missing person case from 1999, St. Petersburg, Russia. 23-year-old ballet dancer. Last seen leaving the Hermitage Museum with an unidentified Middle Eastern man. The case had gone cold within months, jurisdiction issues and diplomatic complications creating a bureaucratic maze that her family couldn't navigate. The final update was from 2003, presumed deceased. Investigation closed. Rachel clicked through to the archived news articles, ran them through translation software, and found Elena's mother's plea. My daughter would never just leave. She was afraid of something. In her last call, she said she'd met someone wonderful from a royal family, but her voice was wrong. A mother knows. Natasha Berg. Disappeared from Berlin in 2004, age 25, scholarship student at a prestigious art academy. The German police report noted that she'd withdrawn all her savings before vanishing, sent a single email to her family saying she was pursuing an opportunity in the Gulf, and was never heard from again. Her roommate told investigators that Natasha had been dating a wealthy Arab sheikh who collected art, but no name was ever recorded. The case was classified as voluntary disappearance. Jennifer Morrison, Australian photographer, missing since 2008. Her family had hired private investigators who traced her to Prague, then to Dubai, then lost her trail completely. There were rumors she'd been seen in various Middle Eastern cities, always with a sophisticated Gulf businessman, but nothing concrete. The private investigators' final report, which Rachel found on a true crime blog, noted, subject appears to have entered into relationship with individual of significant means and international mobility. UE diplomatic complications prevent further investigation. The pattern was meticulous and terrifying. Every woman was blonde. Every woman was between 23 and 30. Every woman had some connection to the art world, students, curators, artists, gallery workers. Every woman had disappeared after a relationship with a man whose description matched Tariq but whose name was never recorded, or if it was, the records had somehow vanished into the protected world of Gulf royalty. Rachel found 13 names in total, more than the 11 photos in the freezer. She didn't want to think about what that meant, about the gap between acquisition and preservation, about the women who'd been deemed failures and removed from the collection entirely. At 6 a.m., Rachel started researching Tariq himself, really researching him, not just accepting the curated biography he'd presented during their courtship. Sheikh Tariq Al-Almohari, born 1989 in Abu Dhabi, son of Sheikh Mohammed Al-Almohari and Svetlana Petrova. His father had been a prominent businessman with connections to the ruling family, wealthy beyond comprehension from oil, real estate, and international investments. His mother had been a Russian model, one of the first Eastern European women to marry into Gulf aristocracy in the 1980s. And his mother had disappeared in 1988, when Tariq was 7 years old. Rachel found the old magazine articles, faded scans of 1980s fashion magazines showing Svetlana Petrova on runways and at royal events in Abu Dhabi. Blonde, ethereal, called the Ice Princess, for her cool beauty and remote demeanor. The articles about her disappearance were sparse but consistent. She'd left a note saying she couldn't breathe in a golden cage and vanished. Her body was never found. Sheikh Mohammed had told investigators his wife had been suffering from depression, that she'd taken clothes and money, that she'd clearly planned to leave, but one article, from a French magazine that had interviewed Svetlana weeks before she vanished, included a quote that made Rachel's blood freeze. I am not a person here. I am a possession. Beautiful things to be kept behind walls, shown off at parties, then locked away again. My son watches me like I'm something that might break or disappear. I don't know how much longer I can survive in this beautiful prison. Rachel sat back from her laptop, the pieces assembling themselves into a portrait of psychological horror. Tariq had been 7 when his mother left. 7 when he'd learned that beauty was temporary, that love was conditional, that the things you treasured could abandon you. His father had died in 2010, officially a heart attack, though Rachel found conspiracy theories suggesting suicide or worse. Tariq had inherited everything at 21. The properties, the wealth, the diplomatic connections that came with being part of the UAE's interconnected web of royal and business families. And apparently he'd decided to build a collection his mother couldn't escape. Rachel's phone buzzed. A text from Tariq. Where are you? You left early. Is everything okay? Her hands trembled as she typed. Just at my old apartment, getting some things. Feeling a bit overwhelmed. Pregnancy hormones. The response came within seconds. I understand. Take your time. I love you. 3 words that had once made her heart soar now felt like a threat. Rachel spent the morning compiling everything into a document: names, dates, photos, links to missing person cases. By noon, she'd created a timeline that stretched from 1999 to present, with Tarek's movements tracked through his various business ventures and property acquisitions. The pattern was clear if you knew to look for it. He'd spent time in St. Petersburg when Elena disappeared, Berlin during Natasha's vanishing, Prague for Jennifer. Each disappearance corresponded to a period when Tarek was in that city for business. She found property records showing that Tarek owned an estate outside a remote desert area near the EU-Oman border, a former private medical clinic he'd purchased in 2003. The facility had been shut down after mysterious patient deaths, bought by shell companies that traced back to the al-Mehri family holding. According to satellite images, the compound was surrounded by desert, accessible only by helicopter or a single private road. The property records listed extensive renovations, medical facilities upgrade, security system installation, residential wing expansion. Rachel's research was interrupted by her doorbell. Through the peephole, she saw 2 Dubai police officers. Her first thought was relief. Maybe someone had already connected the dots. Maybe she wouldn't have to fight this alone. She opened the door with evidence already pulling up on her laptop. Captain Rashid introduced himself with professional warmth, his partner standing slightly behind. Mrs. al-Mehri? Your husband called. He's worried about you. May we come in? Rachel's stomach dropped, but she nodded, stepping aside. She gestured to her laptop, words tumbling out in English mixed with her limited Arabic. I found something. In our garage. Photos of women. A journal with names. Look, Elena Sokolov missing from St. Petersburg. Natasha Berg, Berlin. All of them disappeared after meeting my husband. And there's this compound he owns near the border. This facility. Captain Rashid listened carefully, looking at the screen, his expression growing more concerned. Then he asked to make a phone call, stepped into her kitchen, and Rachel heard low voices in rapid Arabic. When Rashid returned, his entire demeanor had changed. Mrs. al-Mehri, I'm going to need you to come to the station, just to get an official statement. Relief flooded through Rachel. Yes, of course. I have everything documented. I can show you. Actually, Rashid interrupted gently, I think we need to discuss this with my commander. Your husband is on his way as well. He's very concerned about your well-being. The relief curdled into fear. No, you don't understand. I can't see him. He's dangerous. The police station's conference room felt like a trap. Rachel sat with her evidence on her phone, her laptop, her printed documents, waiting for Captain Rashid to return. Instead, the door opened and Tarek walked in, followed by 3 men in expensive suits and a police commander whose uniform was decorated with medals and insignia that spoke of high rank. Tarek looked perfect, worried, loving, the concerned husband in traditional dress. Rachel, Habibti, what's going on? You disappeared. You haven't been answering your phone. Don't, Rachel said, her voice shaking. Don't pretend. I found the freezer, the photos, your journal. Tarek's expression was carefully confused. The freezer? Rachel, what are you talking about? One of the suited men, lawyers, obviously lawyers, stepped forward, speaking in English with a British accent. Commander, my client's wife is clearly experiencing some kind of episode. Sheikh al-Mehri called us out of concern for her mental state. Mental state? Rachel's voice cracked. I'm not crazy. Look at this. She shoved her laptop toward the commander, showing him the missing persons cases. 11 women. All disappeared after meeting him. All blonde. All connected to art. And his journal. I have photos. Tarek reached for her hand, and she recoiled. Something flickered in his eyes, but his voice remained gentle. Rachel, you're pregnant. Hormones can cause paranoia, anxiety. Those photos you mentioned? They're research for my art foundation. I'm preparing an exhibition about missing persons, about beautiful things lost. The journal is my notes. This conceptual art, darling. Surely as a curator, you understand that. The commander was looking at documents one of the lawyers had produced, all in Arabic, all official looking. Sheikh al-Mehri has provided evidence of Mrs. al-Mehri's medical history. Anxiety medication prescribed in America. History of stress-related episodes during graduate school. No, I'm not. This isn't about medication. This is about 11 missing women. Tarek's voice was so reasonable, so concerned. Commander, I think my wife needs medical attention. The stress of pregnancy, moving to a new country, the hormonal changes. I've consulted with doctors who say Western women sometimes experience severe adjustment disorders when adapting to life in the UAE. I just want her to get help. Rachel watched it happen in real time, the net closing around her. The commander's expression shifting from interest to skepticism. The officers exchanging glances. Tarek producing their marriage certificate, documents showing she'd signed prenuptial agreements giving him control of finances for her protection. Medical records he'd somehow obtained. If she were truly afraid, Tarek said quietly, why would she have agreed to move to Dubai? Why would she wear the jewelry I bought her? Why would she be carrying my child? He turned to Rachel, and his eyes were cold despite his warm voice. Habibti, let me take you home. Let me take care of you. This is just pregnancy stress. We'll get you the best doctors. Rachel looked around the room, at the police commander who clearly knew Tarek's family was untouchable, at the officers who'd already decided she was an unstable foreign woman, at the lawyers who radiated expensive competence and diplomatic immunity. She thought about the women in the photos, about whether they'd also tried to get help, about how many people had looked the other way because Tarek was a sheikh and she was nobody. No, she said quietly. I'm not going anywhere with you. But as she walked out of that police station alone, as Tarek watched her leave with an expression that promised consequences, Rachel understood with absolute clarity. She was completely on her own. The system wouldn't save her. The police wouldn't help her. In Dubai, a sheikh with family connections was untouchable. Diplomatic immunity wasn't just a legal concept here. It was reality woven into every institution. And in 5 days, on March 20th, she would be transported to Al Safia facility to join whatever remained of the women in those photographs. The Azure Tower's penthouse had always felt like a palace, but Rachel had mistaken it for love. Now, returning after the disastrous police station encounter, she saw it clearly. The pristine white marble walls were gallery spaces. The carefully curated Arabian furniture and European antiques were display cases, and she was the latest acquisition waiting to be permanently mounted. Tarek was waiting in the majlis, the traditional sitting room, backlit by floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the Burj Khalifa and Dubai skyline like a painting. He'd changed from his concerned husband traditional dress into casual Western elegance, cashmere sweater, tailored slacks, Italian leather shoes that cost more than Rachel. First year of graduate school. He was pouring Arabic coffee from an ornate dalla, the aromatic scent of cardamom filling the air, and he poured only 1 cup. You're not drinking coffee because of the baby, he said, as though they were discussing the weather. I respect that. Self-discipline is attractive. My mother lacked it. She drank too much, did you know that? Tried to numb herself with vodka hidden in her quarters, as if numbness was preferable to presence. Rachel stayed near the door, her hand on her phone in her jacket pocket. I'm leaving. No, you're not. Tarek's voice remained conversational, almost friendly. We both know that now. The police won't help you, you're in Dubai, not America. Your friends have already drifted away. My doing, though you blamed yourself for that, didn't you? Your family thinks you married into royalty and moved on. You have no money that isn't in accounts I control. And you're carrying my child, which means leaving is complicated legally, medically, ethically. Plus, you have no passport. I have it in my safe, remember? For safekeeping. He gestured to the low seating cushions like a host inviting a guest to sit. Rachel didn't move. I saw you found my collection, Tarek continued. The freezer wasn't locked by accident, Rachel. I wanted you to find it. Not yet, ideally, I'd planned to show you after the baby was born, after we transitioned to Al Safia. But you've been so curious lately, so restless. Pregnancy makes women unpredictable. I should have anticipated that. Those women are none of your concern. Tarek's voice sharpened, then smoothed again, a conscious effort at control. Actually, that's not true. They're very much your concern. You'll be joining them soon. I've been preparing your quarters for months. The nursery is adjacent. I learned from Katrina that separating mother and child too early causes psychological complications that interfere with conditioning. The clinical language, the matter-of-fact tone, the complete absence of recognition that he was describing something monstrous. Rachel felt her knees weaken. She locked them, refusing to show vulnerability. What are you? She whispered. Tarek smiled. and for the first time since she'd met him, the expression reached his eyes. "I'm a collector. You knew that. I told you the first night we met. I collect beautiful things. I preserve them. Beauty is inherently temporary, Rachel. Relationships end. People leave. They age. They change. They decide you're not enough, and they walk away in the middle of the night, leaving nothing but a note and a child who wakes up screaming for a mother who's never coming back." He took a long sip of coffee, his hand perfectly steady. "My father used to tell me I was the reason she left. 7 years old, and I was already too intense, too demanding, too much. He'd show me her pictures. She was a model. Did I mention that? Russian, blonde, beautiful. And he'd say in Arabic, 'See how beautiful she was? She could have had any man. Why would she choose to stay with us?' He made me feel like loving her was a crime that drove her away. So you kidnap women who look like her?" Rachel's voice was stronger now, anger cutting through fear. "You drug them, imprison them, destroy their minds because your mother left?" "I don't destroy." Tarek's correction was immediate and sharp. "I preserve. I transform. There's a difference." Elena Sokolov would be 51 now, probably overweight, probably bitter about her failed ballet career. Instead, she exists in permanent beauty at my facility, believing herself to be in treatment for amnesia, believing I'm the doctor who saved her life. She's grateful, Rachel. They're all grateful once the conditioning takes hold. He moved to the window, his silhouette dark against the glittering Dubai skyline. "I perfected the technique over years. Elena was practice, too much resistance had to be terminated. Natasha was better. By the time I got to Jennifer, I'd refined the pharmaceutical cocktail. I consulted with doctors who'd worked in places where such research is possible, former Soviet scientists, specialists from facilities in countries that don't ask questions. Psychological conditioning combined with selective memory disruption. They forget who they were and accept who I tell them they are. They believe they're patients in a private recovery facility. They believe I'm helping them. And the ones who don't believe?" Rachel asked, though she already knew. "The ones who don't believe are buried in the desert surrounding Al Safia." Tarek turned back to her, and his face was serene. 5 out of 17 if you're counting. Better than 65% success rate. Medical trials would call that promising. 17. Rachel's research had found 13 names. There were 4 more women she didn't even know about, for more families who'd never gotten answers. "I'm going to show you something," Tarek said, moving toward the hallway that led to the private wing of the penthouse. "I think you're ready now. I'd planned to wait, but your discovery has accelerated our timeline. Follow me, please. Don't run. Security has been instructed to prevent you from leaving the building, and I'd rather not have them physically restrain you. Stress isn't good for the baby." Rachel followed because what choice did she have? He was right about everything. She had no passport, no money, no allies, no escape route in a country where a sheikh's word was law. Her only advantage was that he didn't know she'd contacted anyone else yet, because she hadn't. The police had been her only attempt, and it had failed spectacularly. Tarek led her past the master bedroom to a section of the penthouse Rachel had assumed was storage or staff quarters. He pressed his palm to a biometric lock. Palm prints, iris scans, the security was extraordinary, and a door she'd never noticed swung open. The hallway beyond was climate-controlled, the walls covered in dark fabric that absorbed sound. "Room 1, Tarek announced, opening the first door. The space looked like an art gallery designed by someone who'd confused preservation with obsession. Walls covered in photographs, hundreds of them, showing blonde women at different ages, different eras, different levels of awareness that they were being documented. Some photos were professional modeling shots, graduation pictures, candid moments of joy. Others were surveillance photos taken from distances, through windows, showing women who had no idea they were being watched. "My research archive," Tarek explained. "I study patterns. What makes a woman beautiful? What makes her vulnerable to collection? What makes her suitable for preservation?" He pointed to a section of photos marked with red X's. These were unsuitable. Wrong psychological profile, too independent, too suspicious. I watched them for months before determining they wouldn't accept conditioning. Better to let them go than to waste resources on failure. Rachel stared at the wall of rejected women, wondering if they knew how lucky they were, how close they'd come to joining the permanent collection. "Room 2. Tarek opened the next door. This space was a laboratory disguised as a medical suite. For stands, monitoring equipment, computers displaying vital signs and psychological assessment charts. Locked cabinets lined one wall, and through the glass doors, Rachel could see rows of pharmaceutical bottles with labels in Arabic and English: Compound A, memory disruption; Compound B, behavioral modification; Compound C, emotional dependency induction. My methods are scientific, Tarek said with obvious pride. I'm not some crude killer. I'm a pioneer in psychological preservation. Do you know how difficult it is to selectively erase a person's identity while maintaining their essential functions? Language, motor skills, emotional capacity, all preserved. But memory, personality, independence, carefully excised. They become blank canvases, Rachel, and I paint them into exactly what I need them to be. He pulled up a computer screen showing video feeds. Live feed from Al Safia. Would you like to see them? Rachel wanted to say no. Instead, she nodded, needing to understand what awaited her. The screen divided into 6 camera feeds, each showing a different woman in what looked like comfortable residential quarters designed in a vaguely institutional style, clean, simple, controlled. One woman was painting, her strokes mechanical and repetitive. Another was reading, turning pages without comprehension. A third was in a courtyard garden under a fabric shade, her movements slow and dreamy in the desert heat. They all had the same vacant expression, the same drugged compliance, the same erased selfhood. Elena is the painter, Tarek narrated. She believes she's recovering from a car accident that caused amnesia. Natasha reads the same book over and over. She thinks it's the first time each day. Jennifer gardens. They're peaceful, Rachel. They're permanent. They'll never leave me. They're prisoners, Rachel said, her voice breaking. They're preserved. Tarek's correction was gentle. There's beauty in permanence. My mother understood that, I think. That's why she left. She knew she was temporary, that age would steal her beauty, that she couldn't maintain the illusion forever. But I've solved that problem. These women will never age past their current state. Their beauty is frozen. Their devotion is guaranteed. They're perfect. He closed the video feed and opened the third door. Rachel's breath caught. The room was a perfect recreation of a 1980s Abu Dhabi villa interior, vintage wallpaper with geometric Islamic patterns, period furniture, outdated television and stereo equipment. Photographs of Svetlana Petrova covered every surface. The Russian supermodel caught in moments of artificial joy at royal events and fashion shows, selling the dream of beauty that never faded. This is where I remember her, Tarek said quietly in Arabic, then switched back to English. Before she left. Before she proved that love was conditional and beauty was temporary, and nothing good lasts unless you make it last. He picked up a photograph, his fingers gentle on the frame. She was wearing this dress the last morning I saw her. She kissed my forehead and said in Russian, "Be good, my darling." And then she walked out and never came back. My father found her note on her dressing table. It said she couldn't breathe, couldn't be the person we needed. She chose freedom over me. For a moment, Rachel almost felt sympathy. Then she remembered the women on the video feed, the bodies in the desert, the journal entries that described human beings like laboratory specimens. Your mother left because she was unhappy, Rachel said carefully. That doesn't give you the right. I'm not asking for your understanding. Tarek set down the photograph and turned to face her fully. I'm explaining so you know what you're joining. You're special, Rachel. You're the first one I've allowed to get pregnant. The others, when it happened accidentally, I had to accelerate their processing. But with you, I planned it. My son will have a mother who never leaves, who never ages in his mind, who's always there. You'll be chemically maintained at your current age. You'll believe you're participating in a medical study. You'll be kind and present and permanent. I'll fight you, Rachel said. Every day, every minute. I'll never stop fighting. Tarek smiled that terrible, gentle smile. They all say that. Elena lasted 3 months before the conditioning took hold. Natasha lasted 6. The longest was Katrina, 9 months, remarkable really. But they all break eventually, Rachel. The human mind isn't designed to withstand sustained psychological pressure combined with pharmaceutical intervention. You'll forget your name. You'll forget your life in America. You'll forget you ever wanted to leave. He checked his watch, an Audemars Piguet that probably cost more than a luxury car. We leave for Al Safia in 4 days. The delay is unfortunate. I'd wanted you to reach your second trimester first, more stable for travel. But your discovery has forced acceleration. I've already notified the staff to prepare your quarters. The nursery is ready. The conditioning protocol is designed specifically for you. And if I refuse to go, you won't refuse. Tarek gestured back toward the majlis, and Rachel realized she'd been herded through his gallery of horrors and returned to where they'd started. Because if you fight, if you try to run, if you do anything to risk the baby, I'll simply sedate you for transport. You'll wake up at Al Safia already in the program. At least if you cooperate, you'll remember these last few days. You'll remember what it felt like to love me before you forgot everything else. He moved to a side table and poured himself more Arabic coffee, relaxed now that the truth was exposed. I'm going to order dinner. You should eat, the baby needs nutrition. Tomorrow we'll start preparing for travel. You'll want to pack things that bring you comfort, though you won't remember their significance after processing. Still, I found it helps with the transition. Rachel stood frozen, watching this monster discuss her upcoming psychological destruction like it was a vacation itinerary. Every exit was blocked. Every authority figure was compromised. Every ally was eliminated. She was trapped in a penthouse prison with a man who'd spent 17 years perfecting the art of erasing women and calling it preservation. But as Tarek turned away to examine his phone, checking messages in Arabic, Rachel's hand moved to her pocket, to her phone, to the one call she hadn't made yet. The police had failed, but somewhere in her frantic research that morning, she'd found something. International agencies that investigated human trafficking in the Gulf. FBI agents stationed at the American Embassy in Abu Dhabi. And one name that had appeared on a dark web forum about wealthy predators. Agent Rebecca Torres, based in the U.S. but coordinating with Interpol on cases involving missing American women in the UAE. Someone had posted, Torres is obsessed with al-Muhari family. She lost her sister to one of them. She's the only one still looking. Rachel had the international number saved. She hadn't called because she'd tried the local police first, because she'd believed Dubai's system would protect her. But systems didn't work when the criminal was part of the system. Local police didn't help when the suspect was a sheikh. She needed someone from outside this golden cage. Someone who wasn't impressed by wealth and royal connections. Someone who wanted justice more than diplomatic peace. Tomorrow, while Tarek was distracted with travel preparations, Rachel would make one call. Just one. And then she'd do whatever she had to do to survive until help arrived, if it arrived at all. Because the alternative was Al Safia. And Al Safia meant the death of everything she was, everyone she'd ever been, every dream she'd ever had. It meant becoming a living doll in a madman's collection, believing, herself grateful for her own destruction. Rachel touched her stomach, feeling the slight curve where her child was growing. I'm getting us out, she whispered too quietly for Tarek to hear. I promise, I'm getting us out. But as she watched her husband scroll through his phone, responding to messages in Arabic from his staff, completely relaxed now that his collection was nearly complete, Rachel wondered if promises meant anything in a world where monsters wore designer suits and called imprisonment love. For days until transport, 96 hours to find a miracle. The Dubai skyline outside the penthouse windows glittered like false stars, beautiful and distant and completely unreachable. The morning of March 17th arrived with the kind of harsh desert light that makes promises feel impossible. Rachel had spent the night in the guest room, Tarek having granted her space to process, which really meant he was confident enough in his control that her physical proximity didn't matter. She'd heard him on the phone past midnight, speaking Arabic in the smooth tones of someone arranging travel logistics, occasionally laughing at something Rachel couldn't understand and didn't want to. At 6 a.m., while Tarek was performing his morning prayers in his private prayer room, 30 minutes exactly, he was religious about routines. Rachel locked herself in the guest bathroom and made the call she'd been planning since yesterday's horror show. The international line rang 6 times. Rachel's heart hammered so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. Then a woman's voice, professional but tired. Torres. Agent Torres? Rachel's whisper was barely audible over the bathroom fan she'd turned on for cover. My name is Rachel Brooks. I'm an American citizen married to Sheikh Tarek al-Muhari in Dubai. I found photos of missing women in his freezer, and he's transporting me to a desert compound in 4 days, and the police won't help because he has royal connections and I think your sister. I read that your sister. Stop. Torres's voice had gone sharp, alert. Are you safe right now? No. Yes. I don't know. He's praying. We're at the Azure Towers penthouse in Dubai. He says he's taking me to Al Safia facility tomorrow. He has 6 women there already. He's been doing this for 25 years. I know what he is. Torres's voice was cold steel wrapped in careful control. Anna was my sister. She disappeared in 2016 after meeting someone from the Al-Mahari family in Dubai. I've been investigating for 8 years through Interpol channels. Where are you exactly? Rachel gave the address, her words tumbling out in desperate fragments. He has a journal. 17 women. 5 are dead, buried in the desert. 6 are at Al Safia near the UAE-Oman border. I'm supposed to be number 12. I'm pregnant. He's going to condition me, erase my memory, turn me into. Listen to me carefully. Torres cut through Rachel's panic with the authority of someone who'd been waiting 8 years for this call. I can't operate in UAE without local cooperation, and you've already seen how that goes. But I have contacts, American Embassy security, Interpol liaisons. If you can get evidence and get to the embassy, I can move on him. Can you get out? No. He has my passport. Security everywhere. He controls everything. What about during transport? When's he moving you? Tomorrow. Helicopter from Azure Towers to Al Safia. But it's private. His pilot, his security. Helicopters need fuel. Torres's mind was already working. Flight time from Dubai to the UAE-Oman border is about 90 minutes. Long-range transport helicopters can't make that without refueling. He'll have to stop somewhere. Probably Al Fajar airfield near the border. I've tracked suspected Al-Mahari family movements through there before. That's when you run. Rachel's hand was shaking so badly she nearly dropped the phone. He'll catch me. His security. I'll coordinate with embassy security. But Rachel, you need to bring evidence. The journal, photos, anything physical. Digital evidence can be dismissed as fake, edited. But physical evidence from inside his home, taken from a secured UAE location, that creates jurisdiction for American involvement. Can you get it? I don't know. He's always watching. Then make him stop watching. Torres's voice softened slightly. You're a curator, right? You know about misdirection, about creating focal points. Give him something else to focus on. Make him believe you've accepted the situation. People see what they expect to see, especially narcissists like him. The prayer had ended. Rachel could hear Tariq moving around, his morning routine continuing with mechanical precision. I have to go, Rachel whispered. Rachel. Torres's voice was urgent. My sister was an art student, American, blonde, smart. She told me she'd met an amazing sheikh at an art gallery in Dubai. That was the last real conversation we had. Everything after was automated texts, emails that didn't sound like her. Then nothing. If you don't get out, you become another nothing. Another American woman who chose to disappear into the Gulf. Don't let him erase you. The line went dead. Rachel flushed the toilet for cover, ran the sink, and emerged from the bathroom to find Tariq in the kitchen having breakfast prepared by staff, fresh dates, Arabic coffee, eggs prepared the way he liked them. The condemned woman's last meal before transport, though he'd never frame it that way. You look tired, Tariq observed in English, his accent refined from Oxford. You should rest today. Travel tomorrow will be stressful, especially with pregnancy. Rachel forced herself to eat, to smile, to play the role Torres had suggested. The compliant wife, the woman who'd accepted her fate. She asked questions about Al Safia, what it looked like, what the other women were like. Tariq answered eagerly, thrilled by her apparent interest, describing the desert gardens and the library, and the art studio where Elena painted the same subject over and over, because her chemically disrupted memory couldn't retain new images. You'll like it there, Tariq said, his hand covering hers with possessive gentleness. It's peaceful. No stress, no decisions, no fear of the outside world. Just permanent presence. You'll paint if you want, read if you want, garden if you want, and you'll never remember wanting to leave. When does the conditioning start? Rachel asked, keeping her voice curious rather than terrified. After the baby is born. The pregnancy hormones interfere with the pharmaceutical cocktail, so you'll have approximately 5 months of transition period. You'll live in your quarters, attend prenatal care with my medical staff, adjust to the facility. The other women will visit. They enjoy having someone new. They don't remember they were once new themselves. Tariq sipped his coffee, speaking as casually as if discussing vacation plans. After the birth, we'll begin the memory restructuring protocol. Small doses at first. You'll start forgetting recent events, yesterday, last week. Then larger gaps. Your life in America. Your gallery work. Eventually, everything before Al Sofia will seem like a dream you can't quite remember. And in its place, we'll build a new narrative. You'll believe you came to Al Sofia for treatment of a psychiatric condition. You'll believe I saved you. You'll be grateful. He said it so calmly, like he was describing a medical procedure rather than psychological murder. Rachel nodded, smiled, asked if she could pack some personal items. Tarek was delighted by her cooperation, telling her to take whatever would bring comfort, though he reminded her she wouldn't remember the significance after processing. While Tarek made phone calls to finalize travel arrangements, she heard him speaking rapid Arabic about helicopter fuel, staff schedules, medical supplies. Rachel moved through the penthouse with purpose. She couldn't take the journal, he'd notice, but she could photograph every page again, more carefully this time, including the Arabic notations she'd missed before. She could take small items, a USB drive from his study that might contain files, a printed itinerary showing transport schedules, medication labels from his locked medical cabinet that she managed to access using a technique she'd learned from a documentary about picking simple locks. Most importantly, she found keys. Small keys on a ring hidden in a locked drawer in his study. She'd watched him open it once through a reflection in a window, memorized the combination. The keys were labeled in both English and Arabic: AS Medwing, AS Quarters 1-6, AS Lab, Al Sofia keys. Evidence that would prove the facility existed, that it had medical wings and quarters and laboratories. Physical evidence Torres could use. Rachel slipped the keys into her pocket, her heart racing. If Tarek noticed they were missing, she was dead. But if she arrived at Al Sofia without evidence, she was erased. That night, Tarek wanted to make love. Rachel endured it, playing the role, hating every second but knowing that resistance now would make him suspicious. Afterward, he held her with genuine tenderness, his hand on her stomach where their child grew, whispering in Arabic words she didn't fully understand but that sounded like prayers. "I never thought I'd have this," he said, switching to English. "A family, permanence, everything my mother denied me when she left. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you for giving me this chance to preserve something beautiful forever." Rachel said nothing, counting the hours until morning, until the helicopter, until her one chance at freedom. The Azure Towers private helipad was windswept and hot on the morning of March 18th. Rachel stood with a small suitcase containing clothes she'd never wear again and evidence that might save her life, watching Tarek supervise the loading of medical supplies and equipment she didn't want to think about. The Dubai sun was already merciless at 10 a.m., the sky a painful blue. The helicopter was sleek and expensive, with Arabic script and the Al-Mahari family crest painted on the side. The pilot, Khalid, was in his 50s with the weathered face of someone who'd flown in worse conditions than moral ambiguity. Two security guards, Omar and Saeed, she'd learned their names over breakfast, loaded luggage with efficient silence. Rachel's phone was in her pocket. She'd texted Torres at dawn using a messaging app that supposedly worked internationally. "Leaving at 10 a.m. Al-Fajar airfield if you're right about refueling. Please be there." The response had been immediate. "Embassy security will be positioned. Run when you can. Don't look back. We'll handle jurisdiction after." At 10:07 a.m., they lifted off. Dubai spread below them, the impossible towers, the Palm Islands, the vast desert beyond slowly swallowing the city's ambitions. Millions of people living normal lives, completely unaware that a woman was being transported to her own psychological execution. Rachel watched the buildings shrink, the highways become ribbons, the people become invisible. She felt untethered from reality, from everything she'd once believed about how the world worked. Tarek sat beside her, relaxed and content, speaking occasionally in Arabic to his security team. 90 minutes, he said to Rachel in English over the helicopter's noise. "Then you'll see your new home. It's beautiful in its own way. The desert has a stark beauty that mirrors the purity of what we're creating there." The flight path took them away from the coast, over the Hajar Mountains, into the vast emptiness of desert that stretched toward Oman. Tarek pointed out landmarks below, wadis where flash floods occasionally brought life, settlements that looked like scattered toys, the endless nothing where secrets could be buried and never found. He narrated Rachel's future destruction like it was a tour of geological wonders. At 11:34 a.m., the helicopter began its descent. Rachel's heart stopped. Too early. They shouldn't be landing yet. Had Torres been wrong about the refueling stop? Then she saw the airfield below, Al-Fajar Airfield, exactly where Torres had predicted. Small, private, just a few buildings and fuel tanks shimmering in the desert heat. The helicopter touched down on a concrete pad with practiced ease. Tarek unbuckled, stretched. 20-minute refuel. The facilities are basic but adequate if you need to use them. He gestured toward a simple concrete building at the edge of the tarmac. This was it. Rachel's one chance. Her only chance. She climbed out of the helicopter on shaking legs, Omar following at a respectful distance. The heat hit her like a physical force, 45 degrees Celsius, the air shimmering with it. Tarek walked toward the facility manager's office, discussing fuel grades and payment in Arabic. Saeed stayed with the luggage. The pilot began refueling procedures, the smell of aviation fuel sharp in the desert air. Rachel walked toward the building, her hand in her pocket clutching the Al Safia keys. Omar was 3 steps behind, professional but alert. She turned, smiled at him. I just need the restroom. The pregnancy. He nodded, understanding. I'll wait outside. Please be quick. Sheikh Al-Almaheri wants to maintain schedule. Rachel entered the building, walked down a short hallway lined with faded posters about aviation safety in Arabic and English. Saw the restroom door. Saw another door marked emergency exit in both languages. Saw through its window a parking area with scattered vehicles and, there, 2 black SUVs with American embassy plates. She didn't think. Thinking was what had gotten her into Tarek's collection in the first place. Thinking he was charming, thinking wealth meant safety, thinking love looked like obsession wrapped in expensive gifts and cultural romance. Rachel ran out the emergency door, setting off an alarm that wailed across the desert silence. Into the parking lot, her pregnant body making her awkward but adrenaline making her fast. Behind her, Omar's shout in Arabic, Mrs. Al-Almaheri, stop! She ran past cars, looking for the signal Torres had said embassy security would give. There, the lead SUV, door already open, a woman with dark hair and an American flag patch on her tactical vest. Rachel Brooks, get in. Now. A gunshot. Nod at her into the air, warning. Omar was following but not shooting to kill because Tarek's orders were clear. Protect the baby at all costs. Saeed was running from the helicopter now, shouting into a radio. Rachel reached the SUV. Strong hands pulled her inside. Go, go, go! The driver floored the accelerator. Both embassy vehicles screamed out of the parking area as Omar and Saeed stood watching, their training warring with their orders, uncertain if they could fire on American diplomatic vehicles. Through the back window, Rachel saw Tarek emerge from the building, saw his face register confusion, then understanding, then rage. Saw him pull out his phone, saw his mouth moving in rapid Arabic, giving orders to people who would chase them, to lawyers who would invoke international protocols, to family members with government connections. Evidence. The woman beside her, Agent Rebecca Torres, Rachel realized, Torres herself had come, demanded, eyes scanning the desert road ahead, where the driver was pushing 140 kilometers per hour toward the Oman border. Rachel pulled the keys from her pocket. Al Safia facility keys, photos of his journal in my phone, USB drive from his computer, names, dates, medication labels, everything I could get. Torres smiled, savage and satisfied, examining the keys with their bilingual labels. Good. This is very good. These keys alone prove the facility exists, give us probable cause. Combined with your testimony as an American citizen. She pulled out a satellite phone. This is Torres. Package secure. Subject is cooperating. Evidence in hand. We need immediate coordination with Omani authorities. We're crossing the border in 10 minutes. What about his lawyers? Rachel asked, her voice shaking as adrenaline began to fade. His family connections? He said he's untouchable. He's not untouchable anymore. Torres's voice was steel wrapped in satisfaction. You're an American citizen. He transported you against your will with intent to imprison you. That's kidnapping of a U.S. national. It doesn't matter how many sheiks are in his family tree. We have jurisdiction now. And once we coordinate with Interpol and get those women out of Al Safia, he's done. His diplomatic connections won't save him from 17 international kidnapping and murder charges. The helicopter was visible in the distance behind them, pursuing, but embassy vehicles had priority clearance at border crossing. Torres had planned this carefully. Routes the helicopter couldn't follow directly, coordination with Omani security forces who were more willing to cooperate with American agencies. At 12:47 p.m., they crossed into Oman. The UAE border guards waved the embassy vehicles through. Diplomatic plates meant something here, meant safe passage. Rachel looked back and saw the helicopter circling on the UAE side, unable to follow into Omani airspace without clearance, unable to stop what was coming. She could imagine Tariq's face, the rage contained behind his careful control, the realization that his perfect collection had developed a flaw, the realization that in trying to add an American to his collection, he'd made his biggest mistake. Subject number 12 had escaped, and she was going to destroy everything he'd built over 25 years of psychological horror. "Where are we going?" Rachel asked. "American Embassy in Muscat first," Torres said. "You'll give a full statement. Then we coordinate the raid on Al Safia. I've already got authorization pending. Interpol, FBI, even some UAE authorities who aren't in the Al Almaheri pocket. We're going to bring those women home, Rachel. All of them." Rachel's hand moved to her stomach. "I'm sorry," she whispered to the child who would grow up knowing its father was a monster. "I'm so sorry, but we're getting out. We're both getting out." Torres put a hand on her shoulder. "My sister was smart too. Anna. She figured it out, I think. Started asking questions, started trying to leave. That's when he killed her. But you're going to make it. You're going to testify. You're going to bury him and his whole family protection network." The Omani desert stretched endless and beautiful around them, so different from the golden cage Rachel had almost been locked in. The embassy SUV raced toward Muscat, toward safety, toward justice, and for the first time in 6 months, Rachel Brooks breathed free air. The helicopter was a distant speck now, circling uselessly at the border, a predator that had lost its prey. And somewhere in a Dubai penthouse, a collector was realizing that sometimes the most beautiful things refuse to be preserved. The American embassy in Muscat, Oman smelled like burnt coffee and air conditioning working overtime against the desert heat. Agent Rebecca Torres had commandeered a secure conference room within an hour of Rachel's arrival, establishing it as a war room for an operation 8 years in the making. Maps of Al Safia facility covered one wall, marked with Arabic and English annotations. Photographs of missing women covered another. And in the center, Rachel Brooks sat with an evidence bag containing keys that would unlock doors 17 women had entered, but only 6 had survived behind. Torres had assembled her team with surgical precision, agents she'd vetted personally over years of quiet investigation through Interpol channels, people who hadn't been compromised by Gulf money or diplomatic pressure. Deputy Director James Reeves had flown in from FBI headquarters within 4 hours of Torres's call. He was a grandfather with kind eyes and a reputation for taking down untouchable criminals. He'd lost a niece to a Dubai trafficking ring in 2009. He understood monsters who wore traditional dress and quoted the Quran while destroying lives. "Walk me through everything," Reeves said, his voice gentle despite the urgency. "Every detail matters for international jurisdiction." Rachel talked for 4 hours straight. The freezer discovery, the journal entries in multiple languages, Tariq's confession in the penthouse, the rooms full of photographs and pharmaceutical equipment, the video feeds showing 6 women in various states of psychological erasure at a facility that officially didn't exist, the burial sites he'd casually pointed out during the helicopter flight over the desert. Every word was recorded, transcribed, documented by a stenographer whose face grew progressively paler. Torres spread crime scene photos across the table, her own unofficial investigation compiled over years. Anna Torres, my sister, American citizen, disappeared March 2016 after dating someone she met at an art gallery in Dubai. She told me his name was Tariq, said he was from an important family. Last known location, a private villa near Jebel Ali. Her final text to me said, "Rebecca, if anything happens, remember, Almaheri family, they own everything here." Then nothing. No body. No trace. Just gone. She laid out more photos. Jennifer Morrison, Australian citizen. Katrina Wells, American art teacher. Elena Sokolov, Russian ballet dancer. I've been tracking the pattern for 8 years through Interpol. Every time I got close, diplomatic immunity shut me down. UAE Ministry of Interior pressure. His family's connections go to the highest levels of government. But now, she gestured to Rachel's evidence. Now we have testimony from an American citizen. We have physical evidence taken from UAE territory. We have probable cause for international action. Colonel al-Balushi from Omani security forces arrived at the embassy at 6 p.m., brought in by Torres because Oman had its own issues with certain UAE families using the border region for activities the Omani government didn't approve of. Al-Balushi was professional, direct, and clearly had no love for the Al-Muhari family. "Show me what you have," al-Balushi said in accented English, his military bearing evident. Torres laid it out. Rachel's testimony establishing Tariq's confession to multiple kidnappings. The Al Safia keys proving access to a secured facility that straddled the UAE-Oman border, technically in UAE territory but accessible through Omani desert routes. USB drive files showing medical protocols for memory restructuring and behavioral conditioning written in English and Arabic. Photographs from Tariq's archive showing surveillance of multiple women. Phone records Torres had obtained through Interpol back channels showing Tariq's movements correlating with every disappearance. He has connections in UAE, al-Balushi noted, but not in Oman. And this facility, he studied the satellite images, is isolated. If we coordinate properly, we can execute a joint operation. Oman provides tactical support and jurisdiction for cross-border pursuit. America provides legal framework for prosecution of crimes against U.S. citizens. Interpol coordinates for international victims. Torres pulled up architectural plans she'd obtained through questionable channels. An Omani construction company had done the renovations to Al Safia in 2003, and their records still existed. The facility is a former private medical clinic, purchased by shell companies in 2003. 80 acres, surrounded by desert. Single access road from UAE side, but there's a service road from Oman that's not on most maps. Main building is 5,000 square feet, residential quarters, medical wing, administrative offices. Underground level confirmed by these construction records. At 9:47 p.m. on March 18th, international warrants were prepared. American warrant for kidnapping of U.S. citizens. Interpol red notices for victims from multiple countries. Omani authorization for cross-border tactical operation. The paperwork was complex, but Torres had been preparing it for years, just waiting for the evidence and jurisdiction that Rachel had finally provided. The tactical briefing began at midnight in a secure Omani military facility outside Muscat. 24 operators from Omani Special Forces, specialists in desert operations. 12 FBI hostage rescue team agents who'd flown in on a military transport. Medical personnel from the U.S. Embassy and Interpol's Victim Services Division, prepared for severe psychological trauma. Dr. Ellen Morris, a forensic psychiatrist who testified in 50 cases involving coercive control and had worked extensively on cases from the Gulf region. Torres stood at the head of the briefing room, laser pointer tracing the Al Safia compound's layout on a projected satellite image. The facility is a former psychiatric hospital, purchased by the Al-Muhari family in 2003 through Emirati shell companies. 80 acres, surrounded by the Rub al-Khali Desert. Single access road from UAE side, gated and guarded. Helicopter pad on the north side. Main building is 5,000 square feet, 6 residential quarters, medical wing, administrative offices. Underground level confirmed by architectural records from the 2003 renovation. She clicked to thermal imaging from an Omani military surveillance drone that had been quietly monitoring the compound for the past 6 hours. 6 heat signatures in the residential wing, likely our victims. 4 signatures in security quarters. 2 signatures in the main administrative section. The facility operates with minimal staff, 10 security personnel, 3 medical staff, 2 domestic workers. All highly paid. All signed NDAs worth millions if violated. All believing they work for a legitimate private psychiatric facility. Colonel al-Balushi added context in English for the American team. These are private security contractors, not soldiers. Most are Pakistani or Filipino nationals working legal security jobs in UAE. They probably don't know the truth about what happens here. We go in fast, we go in loud, we minimize resistance through shock and overwhelming force. Omani law allows us to operate in this border region under pursuit of transnational criminal activity. The assault plan was elegant in its complexity. 3 teams, Team Alpha, primarily Omani forces, would breach from the service road on the Oman side and secure the residential wing where the women were held. Team Bravo, mixed Omani and American, would secure the security quarters and prevent armed response. Team Charlie, FBI specialists, would secure the underground level and administrative offices where evidence would be stored. Insertion at 4 a.m., the dead hour when human alertness was lowest even in desert heat. 2 Omani military helicopters for simultaneous approach from the Oman side, avoiding UAE airspace entirely. Flashbang grenades to disorient but not injure. Priority 1, secure the victims. Priority 2, secure Tariq al-Muhari if present. Priority 3, preserve evidence. Dr. Morris briefed both teams on what to expect, speaking slowly so the Omani operators with limited English could follow. These women have undergone sustained psychological trauma and chemical conditioning over years. They will not recognize they've been imprisoned. They may defend their captor. This is traumatic bonding combined with pharmaceutical manipulation. Do not expect gratitude. Do not expect cooperation. Expect confusion, fear, and in some cases, hostility. Treat them as you would hostages who've been held for years, because that's exactly what they are. Rachel sat in the corner of the briefing room, wearing borrowed embassy clothing, holding a cup of tea she couldn't drink. Torres had tried to send her to secure housing, but Rachel had refused. "I need to be there," Rachel said quietly but firmly. "I need to see them freed. I need to see him arrested." "Absolutely not." Torres's voice was sharp. "You're a civilian. You're pregnant. You're traumatized. You've done your part, you got out, you brought us evidence. Now let the professionals finish this." "Those women," Rachel's voice broke, "they could have been me. If I'd been a day later, an hour later, I'd be in there right now, drugged and conditioned, believing I was someone else. I need to see them walk out. I need to know it's real." "Rachel, listen to me." Torres knelt beside her chair, speaking with forced patience. "This is a tactical military operation. There will be flashbangs, potentially gunfire, dangerous situations. You could be hurt. Your baby could be hurt. And if something goes wrong, if you're there and we have to protect you, it compromises the entire operation and puts those women at greater risk. I won't get in the way. I'll stay in the vehicle. Rachel's hand moved to her stomach. "I need to see it end. I need to watch him lose." Reeves intervened, his voice kind but immovable. "Mrs. Brooks, Agent Torres is right. We have protocols for a reason. You'll monitor from here, from the command center. You'll see everything through helmet cams. You'll hear everything through radio. But you cannot be on site." Rachel nodded slowly, appearing to accept. But her mind was already working. She'd escaped from a man who'd spent 25 years perfecting the art of imprisonment. She could find a way to get to Al Safia. She had to see it end. Had to look into Tariq's eyes when his perfect collection crumbled. Had to be there when the women walked out into sunlight for the first time in years. She owed them that much. At 3:30 a.m. on March 19th, the teams boarded helicopters at the Omani military base. Rachel watched from the embassy command center as Torres had instructed, surrounded by communications equipment and personnel who would monitor the raid remotely. But Rachel had made her own plans. While the tactical teams were doing final equipment checks, Rachel had slipped out of the command center, found the motor pool, and convinced a young embassy security guard, barely 22, sympathetic to her story, to let her take one of the backup vehicles. She told him she needed to get something from her temporary quarters. He believed her because she looked like someone's pregnant sister, not like someone planning to infiltrate a military operation. The drive to Al Safia took 90 minutes across desert roads, following the route she'd memorized from the briefing maps. Rachel pushed the SUV as fast as she dared, knowing she needed to arrive during the raid, not before or after. Her timing had to be perfect. The sun was just beginning to paint the desert pink when she saw the compound in the distance. Low buildings surrounded by chain-link fence, looking innocuous except for the security cameras and reinforced doors. She could hear the helicopters approaching from the north, the Omani military choppers coming in fast and low. Rachel parked half a mile away, hidden behind a sand dune, and approached on foot. The tactical teams were already breaching the perimeter. She could hear the flashbangs, the shouted commands in English and Arabic, the sound of doors being forced open. She shouldn't be here. She knew that. But her body moved on autopilot, drawn toward the facility where 6 women were being freed from the same fate she'd narrowly escaped. Rachel reached the compound's fence just as Team Alpha entered the residential wing. She found a gap where the fence had been cut by the tactical team and slipped through, staying low, moving along the exterior wall toward the main entrance that Team Charlie had breached. Inside, the facility was chaos-controlled by military precision. Omani soldiers securing corridors, FBI agents shouting clear, medical personnel moving toward the residential wing with stretchers and medical equipment, and Rachel, moving through the confusion like a ghost, following the sound of women's voices, confused, frightened, asking in multiple languages what was happening. She found the residential wing, 6 doors all open, women being led out gently by Dr. Morris and her team, speaking in soothing tones, trying to explain that they were being rescued, though the women didn't understand they'd been imprisoned. Rachel stood in the corridor watching Elena Sokolov, subject number 1, the oldest captive, being guided out of her room. Elena looked so small, so fragile, her blonde hair streaked with gray, her eyes vacant from 25 years of chemical conditioning. She was asking in Russian-accented English where Dr. Tarek was, saying she needed her morning medication, saying she didn't understand. "Elena," Rachel whispered, though the woman couldn't hear her over the commotion. Then she heard footsteps behind her, rapid, purposeful. Mrs. Brooks, an FBI agent she didn't recognize, grabbed her arm. "You're not supposed to be here. How did you—" "Agent Torres, we have a civilian in the residential wing." Torres's voice crackled over the radio, sharp with alarm. "Get her out. Now. Get her back to the perimeter." But before the agent could move Rachel toward the exit, another voice cut through the chaos. A voice Rachel had heard in her nightmares every night since escaping. "Rachel." She turned. Tariq Al-Mahari stood at the end of the corridor, emerged from what must have been a hidden room or office. He was wearing traditional white kandura, immaculate despite the chaos, as though he'd been waiting for this moment with the same careful preparation he brought to everything. He hadn't fled. He'd stayed at Al Safia, refusing to abandon his collection. "Subject number 12, Tariq said softly in English, his voice carrying that same terrible gentleness she remembered. "You came back to me after all. Suspect located. Main corridor, residential wing." The FBI agent released Rachel and drew his weapon. "On the ground. Now. Hands where I can see them." But Tariq ignored the agent, his eyes locked on Rachel with an intensity that made her blood freeze. "You destroyed everything," he said, still in that soft, almost conversational tone. 25 years of work, 25 years of preservation, all undone because you couldn't appreciate what I was offering you. "You're insane," Rachel said, her voice shaking. "You imprisoned women. You erased their identities. You killed 5 of them." "I preserved them," Tariq corrected, moving slowly down the corridor toward her. 3 FBI agents now had weapons trained on him, shouting at him to stop, to get down, but he moved as though they didn't exist. "I saved them from aging, from disappointment, from the inevitable decay that destroys all beauty." They were grateful, Rachel. They all became grateful eventually. Even you would have been grateful, given time. "On the ground. This is your final warning." The agents were closing in, but Tariq had covered half the distance to Rachel. "You were going to be my masterpiece," Tariq continued, his voice taking on a dreamy quality. "Mother and child, permanent and perfect. My son would have had a mother who never left, never disappointed, never changed. You stole that from me. You stole my future." "I saved myself," Rachel said, her hand moving protectively to her stomach. "And I saved them." She gestured to the women being led out of their rooms behind her. Something shifted in Tariq's expression. The gentleness vanished, replaced by cold rage. "If I cannot have you in my collection," he said, his hand moving inside his kandura, "then no one can." Everything happened in the space of a heartbeat. Tariq pulled out a curved dagger, ornamental but deadly sharp, the kind worn ceremonially but capable of lethal damage. He lunged toward Rachel with terrifying speed. The FBI agents opened fire, but Tariq was already moving, already committed to his final act of possession. The blade caught Rachel in the chest, punching through her ribcage with the force of Tariq's desperation. She felt the impact before she felt the pain. a massive blow that knocked her backward into the wall. The agent's bullets hit Tarek a second later. He crumpled to the floor 3 feet from Rachel, blood spreading across his white kandura, his hand still clutching the dagger. Rachel slid down the wall, her hand pressed to her chest where blood was welling up between her fingers. The pain came then, massive and overwhelming, radiating through her entire body. Torres came running, her boots pounding on the tile floor. "Rachel! Medic! We need a medic now!" Rachel could hear the commotion around her. Radios crackling, people shouting medical terminology, hands trying to apply pressure to the wound. But it felt very far away, as though she were watching through thick glass. She could see the women, the 6 survivors, being led past her toward the exit. Elena stopped, looked down at Rachel with confused recognition. Are you new?" she asked in her accented English. "Are you here for treatment too?" "No," Rachel managed to whisper, blood on her lips. You're free now. All of you. You're free." Torres knelt beside her, pressing hard on the wound, her hands already covered in blood. "Stay with me, Rachel." "Medic! Where's the goddamn medic?" "The baby," Rachel gasped. "Save the baby. We're going to save you both. Just hold on. The helicopter's coming. We're going to get you to a hospital." But Rachel could feel it, the way her body was shutting down, the way the light in the corridor was getting dimmer even though the sun was rising outside. She'd seen enough medical dramas to know what a chest wound like this meant. The blade had found something vital, lung, maybe heart. She was drowning in her own blood.